Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm still getting everything set up, so I'm just like sitting here awkwardly looking off to the side. Let me know if this will work. Hi, I'm doing well. Sorry, I'm still getting stuff set up over here on the other platforms too. So if you hear some like random clicking and stuff, that's why. You left and you're sleeping so well. That's awesome. Those are like those little joys that happen after you leave that you're like, wow, I didn't realize this was affecting you so much. Okay, I think this is working. Honestly, not sure. Hi. I'm excited to actually be able to go live. My life's been nuts the past 2 weeks with I had finals last week um and then I had my kiddos for a couple of days. So this is the first chance I've been able to go live in like 2 weeks. Okay. So I don't have I kind of have a topic that I was gonna talk about today. It was just mainly just like the steps in healing towards like after narcissistic abuse. So if you have questions evolved around like that, really, if you have questions in general, just ask. I just wanted to give it a title today. Um, okay, if you hear wailing and gnashing of teeth in the background, don't worry about it. It's my cat, my dog. Any advice on how to stop your narcissistic ex from evading your dreams? I get questions about dreams a lot. And, I get why, because I think a lot of us deal with that more so than I don't think we talk about that enough, quite frankly. And I think it's because dreams are kind of like this concept that's a little bit harder for us to kind of wrap our mind around sometimes. Um, for me, I feel like dreams and I'm not an expert on dreams. I'm just going to go ahead and make that little disclaimer right now. It's not an area of my expertise, but my opinion on it is that I think dreams are a way of our subconscious to kind of help bring things to the forefront to help us deal with it and to help us manage, because especially when we're dealing with this kind of trauma and we're moving forward from it and learning everything and processing all the things that have happened to us, I think that it's almost too much for our conscious mind to deal with all at one time. So I think that there's somewhat that maybe a memory will come up in the dream where you're replaying a certain thing in the dream, and I think it's just our way of processing it. It also is just a very common side effect of PTSD, unfortunately. Like that's a very well-known fact, that invasive dreams are part of it. So I think if you are experiencing like a similar dream over and over again, then maybe that's a way that your subconscious is trying to process something. So instead of, and I understand that it is frustrating, but kind of look at it from a different viewpoint of like, okay, what is my mind trying to reveal to me through this? What am I not processing yet? Because if your mind is bringing it up in the dream, then you might be ready to process it, as opposed to where a month or so ago maybe you weren't. So you can just kind of take that opportunity um, to work through that, if that makes sense. Now, again, I'm not an expert on it, but that's how I approached it. I think the trauma bond is breaking. I can breathe and I'm not anxious at all. That's so great. Why do they need control and everything? So I actually just posted a video on YouTube about that exact topic. So if you're not following me on YouTube, make sure that you are. It's the same exact handle. And it was my most recent video on there, not the shorts, but like the actual video. I actually broke down like ways that they control you and why they do it. So I do have a video on that on the other platform. I know TikTok doesn't like me talking about other platforms, especially. Ah. I'm going to announce this probably a couple of times as people come in and out, but I want to make sure that I announce it right now because I'm really excited about it. So I've had several people ask me to do this. And so I finally had time to like sit down and do it and kind of organize it a little bit. But I just created a free Facebook group. It's like almost kind of like support group kind of thing. So if you aren't following me on Facebook, make sure that you are, because that is officially like launched now. Like I literally just finished it yesterday. The whole goal of the Facebook group is really just to help have that virtual community, because the biggest thing, well, not the biggest thing, but one of the big things that we feel when we're dealing with getting out of these narcissistic relationships is isolation, and just being able to connect with other people. That is not something I want on here. Never mind. Sorry. And a very creepy icon. Try to go co-live with me on TikTok. Declined. But anyway, so what it does is it helps get that a virtual community, if nothing else. Obviously, like the in-person support and in-person community is great. But I'm at least having the Facebook one now. It's completely free. It's just a place for people to connect. I'll probably go. I'm still kind of figuring things out with it, to be honest, like what I'm actually going to like do in it. But I'll probably like at least go live in there every once in a while, like just for the Facebook group, just to kind of check in and see how people are doing. But mainly that's, oh my gosh, I don't know if y'all can hear my cat in the background. Sounds like an exorcism is happening. And I think I can. Oh, I can. I'm actually going to add, it's a private community, like it's a private Facebook group, so you have to request to join it. So if you're on Facebook and YouTube, I'm putting the link in the comments for that right now. And no, it's not a tiger. It's just my cat who's clearly being attacked by my dog. So fun times. So anyways, that was all over the place. Sorry, got really distracted between them and then someone trying to go co-live with me. Anyways, I have a free Facebook group now. It's called the Redemption Army Facebook group. If you're on Facebook or YouTube right now, I just put the link into the comments. And then if you're on TikTok, oh my gosh, Duchess, can you leave Rupert alone, please? Thank you. Watch, she'll come in here now. It's never boring at my house. But if you're on TikTok, just go to my actual profile. It's on my website now too. Okay. That was a hot freaking mess express. So let's move on. Try that again later. How are you supposed to heal if a narcissistic person turned you into one? Okay, so I kind of understand this question. Understand, like, nobody can turn you into a narcissist, and we all have narcissistic traits. It's a human trait. There's just a healthy level of them or not. But narcissistic traits are also very common after trauma, and it's a defense mechanism, whether it's your walls are put up, or you don't trust people, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of reasons why that can happen. So, and sorry, I keep plugging my YouTube, but I actually have a video on that too. Where I talk about, like, okay, is this narcissism or is this trauma related? So let's just use no contact, for example. Actually, no, let's do silent treatment. This is a better example. So if y'all have heard us talk about on the platforms, or heard me talking about like stonewalling or silent treatment, that's a very common emotional abuse tactic where they just cut off communication, or they just stonewall you. They don't have conversations that they don't want to have, especially if you're trying to hold them accountable. So it's kind of like where they just shut down. Well, if they're doing it in a way that it's the motive behind the action. So if the motive behind that is, I'm not wanting to take accountability, I'm not wanting to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to stonewall and shut down. Some people, when they get scared, or they get into fight or flight, or they don't necessarily want to make things worse, they also shut down. And that can look like a silent treatment because they go silent. But the heart behind it is not the same. The heart behind it is protection, and it's safety related. So it looks the same, like it can appear the same, where you just hear what silent treatment is, and you're like, oh, well then maybe I'm the problem, or maybe I'm this or that. Well, what was the heart behind that action? So you can kind of, again, find that video on my YouTube, because it goes into a lot more depth about it. I think my fiance's home. Your video of him coming home hit so hard and it was a struggle for me. Yeah, it was really weird when I had that feeling when I pulled up to this house and had that, I wonder what version I'm coming home to him, it pop into my brain, because I had never had that in our relationship at all. And it just was the change of environment, because the last time that I had a home with someone, that was a daily thought for me. So fortunately, I was able to work through it pretty fast because I understood it, but it can be really frustrating. Okay, sorry, catching up on. I had an alcoholic, very narcissistic mother. I'm almost 40. I'm still recovering with what I experienced in my childhood. I'm really sorry. Your words and videos are so. Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. Hi, babe. Don't change clothes in here, because then I'll have to open another platform for that video. This ain't that. This ain't that live. That kind of live.
Dang.
How do you break the trauma bond from a narcissist? Sorry, I was reading other things. So that's a very loaded question, because there's no just like quick, easy answer with this. It's a process. I will tell you, it doesn't have to take forever. I think the biggest thing that people need when they're really trying to break a trauma bond is you need strategies and you need direction and you need a plan, because this is one of those things where I will just be honest. People say this thing of like, oh, time heals all wounds. Not this, because what happens in trauma bonds and narcissistic relationships, so there's a lot of really bad mental habits that are developed by us on the other end of it, like rumination. Rumination doesn't just start after the relationship's over. It starts way into the relationship, because it just looks different. So in the relationship, it's, you're walking on eggshells. You're not sure what version of them's coming home, like we talked about earlier. You're trying to figure out like if what they're saying is true, or is it like total BS. You're constantly in this state of ruminating and thinking, and all that it is it's a negative, repetitive thought process that plays on a loop in your mind. The good news is that's just a bad mental habit. Bad news is bad habits don't just go away. They have to be replaced with healthy habits. And I think the part that what can take people so long is it either takes them a really long time to figure out things that work for them, or strategies that work for them, or they just never get a plan in the first place. And because what a plan does and what strategies do is it takes you from this place of really just mental, like a mind F, for the lack of a better term. And it gets you to this place where you're not avoiding everything. You're not avoiding your triggers. You're learning how to manage them. You're not trying to willpower your way out of not thinking about them and self-deprecating and all this stuff, but you're actually learning how to redirect your thoughts and have cognitive strategies and all of that. And that's the whole reason that I created my course. So if you don't know, I do have a course called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. I want to make sure that you guys know it's a 7-week course right now. On Thursday, I'm adding a whole nother module in it that's about managing your triggers, and how to reduce the intensity of your triggers. So it's actually about to be an 8-week course. But because of that, the price of the course is actually going up on Thursday. So you have 2 days left to actually get it, where it's only $65, and there are payment plans available for it. But it breaks everything down week by week. So 1 week, it explains what happens to your brain with trauma. Week number 2, it explains what rumination is and how to figure out your rumination cycle so you can get off that cycle. Then there's emotional management. Then there'll be trigger management. And then there's finding closure and reaching radical acceptance. So each week has these strategies that you can take and implement into it. And they're all the things that I've either learned in grad school or things that worked for me. I will tell you, like I said, in 2 days, the price goes up because it's a bigger course in 2 days. But anybody that's already enrolled in the course, you automatically get all the new information on Thursday. So you might as well get it now while it's at the price that it's at, because it will never only be $65 again. And I put in a lot of work on this course to be a valuable resource because I wanted it to be the thing that I needed the most at the time. So the link for that is also in my profile. But I'm also going to, I think I can actually do this on here. Let me see. Ah, wait, hold on. This might pause for a second because I think I can just copy the link straight into here. Hold on. Okay. So for the course, I just posted the link in the comments for that. You can also just send me a DM and ask me any questions that you've got. But like I said, there's only 2 days to get it at the price that it's at. And then you'll see all the new stuff in 2 days. So that's launching on Thursday. And if that link doesn't work in the comments, like I said, you can always just go to my actual profile. Let me get back to y'all's comments. There we go. I'm like hyper. I think my pre-workout is still working off out of my system because I'm like jittery. So sorry, I'm a little all over the place. So as far as someone just asked, how do I sign up? I want to take the course, and can you tell me more details about it? So yes, it's self-paced. It's 7 weeks. It's on what's called a delay. So like when you first start it, you're only going to have access to week 1. And then a week later, you'll have access to week 2, and then so on and so forth. The reason I do that is that way you can take this information in bite-sized pieces and actually implement what we're talking about on a week-to-week basis. So that way you can take your time with it. It will be 8 weeks total. I'm just going to talk about like what it's going to be on Thursday. It's 8 weeks total. Each week has its own topic and strategies. There's optional worksheets that you can get with it. There's also an optional reflection journal that you can either do on its own or you can do it in conjunction with the course. But it has like videos in there. It has links to articles that I use to support some of the information that I'm saying. It has parts of my story in it. And like I said, it's 8 weeks total. And what it does is the heart behind it is to help get you out of this rumination cycle, because it's really hard to move forward in your life when you're constantly thinking about the past. So for me, breaking out of rumination is one of the most important parts of moving on and rebuilding your life. And that was the hardest thing for me to get over too. It was really, really difficult. Can you replay it? If I understand this question correctly, and if I don't, just ask me again. But yes, so once you get it, you have open access to it. So like there's not an expiration date that you have to like do it in a certain amount of time or anything like that. Hang on, I see you asking for the. Oh, there we go. Now I can reply. Okay, sorry. I'm still figuring some of this stuff out. There you go. But yeah, you can take it as many times as you want or anything. Okay, you don't get impatient. There's a lot of comments and questions coming in. So okay, so when it comes to, let me make sure I didn't miss any others in the pack there. Hi, over on YouTube. So when it comes to like, really, when it comes to like top signs of narcissistic abuse, I would probably say first and foremost, do they ever take accountability for their actions, or are they always blaming it on you? Like that's number one. A big part of this, and you have to understand, I don't really care about the label. Like I know we use the term narcissism and narcissistic abuse, blah, blah, blah. You'll see I rarely talk about the actual disorder because I don't care about the disorder. It doesn't matter what we label it. It's about what the behaviors are doing to you. So are they constantly making you feel like you're the problem? Do you feel like you're being, the fancy term is coercive control, so are they bullying you into submission? Yeah, are they kind of making you wear certain things or not certain things? Like, can you have a life outside of them, or do you always have to like check in with them to where they know where you're going and what you're doing? Um, this is a pretty big one that is not talked about enough, I think. So, do they say things out in public? It's called dog whistling, and it's where people will say things out in public that sound like normal communication or normal things to everybody else, but it's an absolute dig at you. So, for example, if they're always digging at you at home about like um, how the house is never clean, or it's like, we'll just use that. They're always like you're home by yourself with the kids all day long. The house is never going to be perfect. But they're always harping on you, about how the house is never clean or this or that. And then you go over to a friend's house, and the first thing that they say is like, "Oh my gosh, look at this place. It's just so clean, isn't it?" And it sounds like they're complimenting the owner of the home, but it's like this abusive version of an inside joke. That is a very big sign. My ex used to do stuff like that quite a bit when it came to like my appearance. Um, that was fun. But a lot of it is just if you're having a lot of anxiety or just fear or not knowing what version of them you're dealing with, um, then at the very least, you're probably in a toxic situation. Whether you want to use the term narcissism or not, it's at least toxic. So, dog whistling and gaslighting work very well together. Dog whistling is kind of like a tactic to gaslight you, if that makes sense. And gaslighting is also a way, it's like a manipulative form. If you look at the actual definition of gaslighting, it's a way of convincing you that you're the problem, if that makes sense. Like almost like where you accept the responsibility, not the like blame shifting is where they just straight up say, it's your fault, it's this, it's that, or whatever. Um, but gaslighting is kind of more of a way for you to get to accept the responsibility by making you think that it's your fault. Found it on YouTube. Hey there. Sorry, it like will pause for a second and then it's like 14 comments at one time, so it gets a little overwhelming. um, honestly, when it comes to examples of gaslighting, okay, I'll just use a personal example that was very, very common in my relationship. So we would be like having a discussion, and I always had to like keep myself in a position of where I didn't really show emotion or I didn't show frustration or I didn't anything like that because I knew if I did, then it would set him off. Right. So, and that developed because of this continual gaslighting. So, you know, he would say things like in the argument, "Well, I have an attitude with you because you have an attitude." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, I've not had I have an attitude now because now I'm irritated, but like up until this point, I've not had an attitude. Like, I know when I've got one and I know when I don't." So he would say that, and then he would be like, "Well, it's because of the way you said this, or it's because your eyebrow went this way." I'm not kidding you. It was like things like that. Like, well, you your eyebrow moved a certain way, and so you have this attitude or this or that. And like I'm sitting here processing and I'm like, well, I know I talk with my face. Like I know that I do. Like my face says it all. So maybe my eyebrows did move in a way that I didn't know that they did. And so then I'm sitting here starting to convince myself the problem until I apologize. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't, I wasn't trying to have an attitude and this and that. And I accepted the responsibility myself because of this like kind of gaslighting way of convincing me that I'm the problem without directly telling me that I'm the problem, you know? So you can also like, if you just be careful with Google, but you can also just honestly go on Google and just ask it examples of gaslighting. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can find on it. Oh, you're too sensitive. I got that one quite a bit too. You're just so sensitive. You take everything I say personal. Because it is personal, asshole. This is a good question. Are narcissistic behaviors intentional, and can they be changed? So here is my take on this. And this is something that actually I talked to about with my professor in grad school, who is like an expert in mental health. Like she's done it for 20 plus years and she's worked with people with NPD. Behaviors from, we're not going to talk about NPD, but I'm just narcissistic behaviors. They are absolutely intentional. They know what they are doing. The thing with it is, especially if they do have the actual disorder, it's like they just can't help themselves. They create this reality in their mind that allows them to avoid accountability of their actions because they can't handle the accountability of their actions. It's not that they don't feel emotions, it's that they don't know how to handle them, with the exception of anger and rage. That one they're really good at. But they don't know how to deal with guilt. They don't know how to deal with self-blame in a way. They don't know how to accept responsibility. It's almost kind of like, okay, if you want great examples of and hear me on this. If you want great examples of narcissistic traits, look at young kids. Like I've got 3 kids myself, so I'm like, children have these kind of narcissistic traits where it's like, did you take the cookie out of the cookie jar? No. Yes, you did. I said, no, you didn't. I sat there and watched you. I know you took the cookie out of the cookie jar. No, I didn't. They're just like, they're convincing themselves, nope, because they know if they admit they took the cookie out of the cookie jar when they weren't supposed to, they're going to get in trouble, whatever that looks like. Or like my younger two, they'll constantly like pick on each other to try to get the other one to react, because then that one will get in trouble or whatever. Well, narcissistic individuals, they stay at this very elementary state of emotional development. So they know what they are doing. They know that they are lying to you. They know that they are cheating. They know that they are trying to make you get stuck in your head. It's just that they can't help themselves. Do I like, and again, I'm not necessarily talking about NPD. NPD can't be cured. It can be managed, but it can't be cured. There is no cure for it. It's just like there's no cure for any other mental health disorder, really. You just have to take responsibility and own the fact that you have it and then do the work to put into it. Um, but I think people that do have these natural tendencies with it without the actual disorder, I do think that it's possible for people to change. I really do. I mean, I wouldn't be going into the field that I'm going into if I didn't believe that people could change and improve their life. I think anybody is capable of change. I just think individuals with these kind of personality traits, it's just a lot more difficult for them to change. That's the part. And it's not an overnight fix. It takes a ton of work, it takes a ton of resources, and it takes a ton of time. So when you have someone that has these traits and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later they're like, "Oh, I'm so much better. I've changed so much." Mm, okay. It's just that you can't fix all of this in 2 weeks. There's just no freaking way. That was a really long answer, and I got a little bit on a tangent with it. Oh, women absolutely can be narcissistic too, not just dudes. Sorry, I do talk like in the male pronouns a lot for 2 reasons. My abuser was a man, and 84% of my followers are female, so it's just kind of an automatic thing for me. But absolutely, because honest to God, probably some of the worst emotional abuse that I ever dealt with was in a work environment from my mentor who was a female. That woman effed me up like for a very long time. And this was actually before I even met my narcissistic ex. And that was really my first experience with it. I just had no idea what it was at the time. Now, once I got out of my relationship and started learning about this, I realized what I dealt with her. But she was one of the worst. Like it literally messed with my self concept so much working for her for 3 years. I had no idea who I was by the time I left her, like left her job in her company. It was awful. So yeah, they absolutely can be females. Your content is getting me through so much. Oh, thank you. Oh, I love this question. How did you get the strength to leave? Um, Here's the reason why I love this question is because my answer will probably really surprise you. That I didn't really get the strength to leave in the sense where I like escaped or well, I did escape, but where I like made this plan or anything like that. I left because it was pure fight or flight. It was a matter of my physical safety because what happened was, and I won't get into all the details of the last night that he was there, but essentially we were in the middle of a pretty intense argument that was going through. Y'all remember the text arguments? Weren't those the best? We were like arguing through text. Well, he was trying to argue through text all day long. I kept trying to tell him, like, I'm at work. I can't deal with this right now. We'll talk about this when we get home. He wouldn't leave it alone. And instead of coming home to deal with the issue, he went out and partied with his friends and showed up at the house at like wee hours in the morning, just drunk as a skunk. And I'm pretty sure he was more than drunk, but that's speculation. And he got very violent with me that night. And I was backed into a corner, like up against a wall, backed into a corner. He's standing over me. Y'all know the black eyes. Black eyes were happening. Fist was balled up, reared back. I mean, he was spitting on me. It was awful. And it was just this moment of like, I honestly, like, it was like a premonition moment where it was like, this is where this is headed. And I just saw, let's just say, a really bad image in my brain. This is what's about to happen if you don't do something. So I just essentially bowed up to him and I just said, get the F out of my house. Much louder. And I actually said it. And he tore our bedroom up. It's kind of comical, like thinking about it now. Like he flung the door open so hard it left a hole in the wall. He was like hitting the walls it was such an adult temper tantrum. And he was like hitting the walls and so stuff was falling off the walls. Like he freaking destroyed the bedroom. And he left and I knew that he wasn't done. I knew he was going to come back. So I called my parents. I was like, I need y'all to come to my house like right now. And so they did. And this whole him leaving, coming back and to finish the argument and this and that. It was like every time I told him that he couldn't stay, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. But I knew if my parents were there, he wasn't going to touch me because he wasn't getting his way. Because every other time that we've had a big argument, he's been allowed to come back. But this time I was just like, no, you can come back at 11:30 tomorrow and get your stuff. But you're not staying here. And so it would just get worse and worse and worse. It was a total of like 5 times where he left and came back like 15 minutes later. So I didn't necessarily get the strength to leave. I guess I did. Like in that moment, I was forced to have the strength to leave of you're getting out of here. And I just, because I knew a line was about to be crossed. That was a scary one. So he did never technically put his hands on me. His behavior was very scary. Some people say, and I don't really know if it matters, but some people do say that what I went through like is classified as physical abuse because he didn't actually touch me, but he kept coming towards me, if that makes sense. So it's like he's yelling, and he's coming closer as I'm backing away until I'm up against the wall. And I mean, he's right here, right above me. So no, he didn't ever actually touch me. He spit on me, but he didn't actually touch me. I finally divorced my abusive husband. Your content helped me realize I deserve better. I'm very proud of you. I know this is a very hard and tumultuous journey. Fancy word of the day, tumultuous. But and spitting does make it assault. I know. I don't know. I guess, and I do this thing where I like minimize my trauma because I know there are a lot of other people that had it so much worse than I did. So it's like I've really struggled saying like, yeah, I went through physical assault because when I hear that, I think of my clients' stories, like what people are talking to me about what they went through. And I mean, it was nothing like that. So I do have that tendency where I do minimize my own trauma, which I know is probably not very healthy. Because just because it wasn't as bad as somebody else doesn't mean it wasn't traumatizing to me. So, okay, so just another reminder too, in case you weren't on here earlier when I announced it, I do have a free Facebook group now. It's just a virtual, essentially kind of support group. There's really not a huge I'm still kind of figuring out what I'm going to do on it, but I did officially launch it. So if you're not following me on Facebook, make sure that you are, because you will get, I think you automatically get invited to the group. But I also have the link on my website. And if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube right now, I just put the link in the comments too. So I'd love to have you as part of that. It really helps to just have other people that understand what you're going through. And it makes you feel a lot less isolated, a lot less crazy. So that's the whole goal of this Facebook group. So that's my fun announcement today, because I'm excited about it. Been having people ask me to do this for a very long time. Okay, I really appreciate you saying this, because you said your voice is so therapeutic for me, and I'm laughing because like I hate the sound of my voice. Hate it. I really like I've always been very uncomfortable about it, and I don't even like listening to my own recordings and stuff, because I'm like, eh. But thank you for saying that. It's really sweet. I don't know if I'm struggling. Oh, this is a great question. I don't know if I'm struggling with the trauma bond or rumination. How do I tell the difference? So, what I will tell you is, if you are still in a trauma bond, rumination is very, very likely to be happening. And, you know, all I can tell you from my personal experiences, when I was still trauma bonded to him, even as it was breaking, I was still struggling with rumination, because I was trying to get. Okay, so how do you tell if you're dealing with rumination? We'll just go with this. If you're dealing with rumination, there's a lot of signs for it. Number one, well, the definition of rumination is a negative, repetitive thinking cycle that plays on a repetitive loop in your mind, in some form version of that. It's a much prettier definition in my course. It's the actual definition in my course. But essentially, it's just a repetitive negative thought pattern that's on repeat in your mind. And that can look in several different ways. So that can look like you're cyber stalking either your ex. This is what I was really good at, was cyber stalking my ex, or maybe you're cyber stalking the new supply. You're replaying certain aspects of your relationship over and over and over again. Or maybe you are replaying the same memory over and over again. Maybe you are trying to like put the puzzle pieces together of the relationship. And what's really frustrating is when you answer or figure one thing out, then it leads to like 6 more questions and these other rabbit trails and this and that. They're like the first person that you think about when you wake up, the last person that you think about when you go to bed. But some of these things are also very common in a trauma bond too. So for me, I think they go hand in hand. I think rumination is the side effect of being in a trauma bond. But as your trauma bond is breaking, then the rumination also starts to break too. And someone just said, I research narcissism like crazy. That's part of the rumination too, because you can get really stuck. Now, hear me and hear me well. The education phase of this, like educating yourself on the cycle and the traits and what narcissistic abuse looks like, it is important. The danger with it is we get very stuck in that education phase. And at some point, you have to take that same mental energy and time and shift it into your own healing. Because if we have the time and we have the energy to be sitting here and replaying all these things, or educating and staying stuck on the research of the narcissism part, then we have the mental time and energy to be putting it into ourselves. We just haven't made that shift yet. So, and here's why we get stuck in the education phase. We doing that now? Yes, technically you are. But why we get stuck in that phase is because it gives you some form of clarity, and it does give you some sort of answers as to what the hell just happened to you, because there are so many unanswered questions. There is such a lack of accountability. There is such lack of closure that when we're doing this research phase, it does make us feel better, because we at least have some sort of answer, even if it's not the specific one for our situation. It does help bring it. It makes us feel like we're getting more closure, and in a way, it does. But we get addicted to that feeling almost and get very stuck in that cycle. So, with that said, I know I said this earlier, but that's what my course helps do. Or my course helps you do. That was not good English. What my course does is it helps you get from this phase of constantly thinking, whether it's educating or whether it's the replaying or the cyber stalking or this or that, and helps you take this, understand why this is all happening, but more importantly, take you from the shift to where you're taking control back of your own thoughts. And what you're doing is You're learning how to redirect the thoughts so that way you can start telling yourself the truth of the matter. You're also learning how to not self-deprecate and blame yourself for everything and not keep yourself in the cycle of emotional abuse, but where you're your own abuser. It also helps you learn how to manage your triggers and emotional management strategies and putting these things into practice. So again, since I'm talking about it, I'm doing essentially like a mini relaunch of the course on Thursday to where a whole nother module is added, extra information is added throughout the course. So the price is going up on Thursday. Right now it's only $65. It will only be this way for today and tomorrow. That's it. But if you start it now, when I launch all the new information on Thursday, you'll get all the new information. So you might as well just start it now because all the current members will get the new information and not have to pay the new price for it. So there's only 2 days left for it. And just go to the link that's in my bio and you'll be able to get the information for that. So no, that's a very fair question. So my credentials are one of two things. A, it's lived experience. It's what I've actually gone through and what worked for me. The other one is I'm not licensed yet because I am still in school, but I am 2/3 of my way done with a doctorate in occupational therapy, and mental health does fall under our framework of practice. So especially when it comes to the trigger management, I learned all this stuff in school. I really wish that I had known it back then, but cognitive strategies and all of that. So I don't market myself as an OT because I'm not technically licensed yet. I am a student practitioner at this point, but that's why you're able to get everything so much cheaper from me right now because I'm not a technical OT. But that's where a lot of my information and training has gone from. It's funny how things work out. My mentor in school was the mental health professor of our program, and she's actually worked with people with NPD for years and other disorders as well. But she's worked with sociopaths, she's worked with psychopaths, she's worked with all the cluster Bs, schizophrenia. So I learned a ton from her. She was actually my faculty mentor. So that's a very fair question, and I don't take it disrespectfully. But that's also why and y'all don't need to know this, but we're just talking. That's why I've not gone and done certified life coach or anything like that because I'm about to be a doctor and all this stuff. And I'm paying a lot of money for it. And so I'm not paying extra money for life coach certification when I'm about to have a doctorate. But yes, very fair question. But the other thing too is and I understand, we want to know what people are talking about. It's legit. And by the way, in the course, there's all these, because again, since I'm in grad school, I have access to critically acclaimed articles is what they're called. And oh my God, evidence-based practice stuff. So I back what I'm saying with links to a lot of the articles throughout it too. So if you want to, you can even go and read the articles because essentially I sum them up. I was going to say something else and I already forgot what it was. I told y'all I'm pretty hyper today. I don't know what's going on with me. I think partly is I'm just excited to be on live. I haven't been able to do this for a while. What was I going to say? Oh, and the other thing why I think it's great that I'm able to do a clinical perspective and the lived experience perspective, it's kind of like the concept if you go and work at a CrossFit gym. A lot of owners or trainers at a CrossFit gym aren't certified personal trainers, but they know what they're doing because they've done it or they've lost the weight themselves or whatever. So I think it's really powerful to work with people that have actually been exactly where you are and learn how to get through it. Because especially in this world, if people either get it or they don't. And I mean, there's countless people that I've coached that are my therapist doesn't even understand it. My therapist doesn't even understand narcissism or doesn't even think that narcissistic abuse is real. So even if you go to professionals, it's sometimes really hard to get validated. So anyways, that's just kind of my own little tangent about it. This is a good question. So what does it mean to be trauma bonded? I'm not sure I understand the term. So essentially a trauma bond is they're calling it, well, first and foremost, it actually used to be called a betrayal bond. That was the original term. They're just now starting to call it trauma bond, where it's not just a pop culture term, where they're actually starting to accept it as a real term. But it used to be called a betrayal bond. And I actually really like that term too, because it's very fitting. But what a trauma bond essentially is, another pop culture term for it is, it's called a love addiction, because you literally end up getting psychologically addicted to the person that you are with. And it's because of this cycle of building you up and devaluation, which this is why, by the way, y'all, this is why narcissism in the workplace is so prevalent, because they teach you how to do that. Like the sandwich technique, like, oh, build them up and then devalue and then end it on a positive note. Like, that's literally the cycle. Another side tangent. um I'm sorry, I'm just cringing because I remember my narcissistic boss. She was like teaching me to do that with people. Now looking back on it, I'm like, ew, it's so gross. But when you think about it, when you're in these relationships with very toxic individuals, you have really, really high experiences with them, like the love bombing and um my brain just went crazy. They book the vacations, they're telling you all the things that you want to hear, they're future faking, like, and you have these really high moments with them. And then there's these extreme low moments of devaluation, verbal abuse, maybe even physical abuse. And then they go back to the re-love bombing. And it's just this constant up and down, up and down, up and down. So if you think about it, you can almost picture it like this massive roller coaster. Well, what happens, and I don't necessarily get into all the science of it, it's in my course, but in the science of it all, it's working the same neurotransmitters as it does for like hardcore extracurricular activities. If y'all know what I'm saying, I'm not really supposed to say it on here, but it works with the same neurotransmitters and patterns in your brain. So you actually literally get addicted to this individual. So it's the best way to describe a trauma bond, like just in normal terms. It's knowing that it's better for you to leave, or knowing that you don't want them in your life, or knowing that they're causing you more harm than good, but you just can't leave. That's a trauma bond in a nutshell. Very good question. Thank you for asking that. I'm over the research and pretty much done with the repetitive thoughts. That's good. But there's no motivation. That's normal. And if you think about it, you are tired. Like, you have been through some severe emotional trauma. Your body is tired. You probably also haven't been sleeping well for God knows how long. When you are dealing with this constant state of being in fight or flight, the chemicals and the hormones and the neurotransmitters that are being released in your body that whole time, it causes damage to your body. Like, I was doing some like for fun research on my school's platform, just seeing what current research is out there right now with abusive relationships. I need to pull up the article again, but it was like a crazy high number of people that have gone through extensive emotional abuse, and the correlation of things like inner gut issues, chronic pain, autoimmune diseases. It was a crazy high number. I don't want to say a number because I don't want to misspeak, but I was shocked by the percentage that it was. And it's just because of the stress that's being put onto your body, because stress is really bad for our body. That's why meditation is one of the most powerful forms of self-care, because it helps release some of the stress that's in your body. We all have stress, and we live in a go 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 society, so that doesn't really help either. But it literally affects things like your kidneys and your stomach and your digestive system. It affects all that stuff. So when you're constantly in this fight or flight, you have systems in your body that are being continually activated that were never supposed to be continually activated, that were just supposed to do that when you are in a dangerous situation. But when you're chronically in danger, it does make it literally like screws your whole system up. It's kind of wild when you really start to read about it. Well, I will ask you this, because you're saying you feel like it's been forever and you need to bounce back by now. Number one, there's no timeline, so don't hold yourself to a standard that doesn't exist. And number two, are you allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty about the rest. Because if you're feeling guilty while resting, it's kind of counterproductive. So make a deal with yourself. So this is what I used to do. I would make a deal with myself where I would say, like, okay, I'm going to sit in this feeling for 30 minutes. And I would literally set a timer on my phone. And after this is done, I'm going to go up and do something, whether it's clean the dishes or get the laundry that's been sitting in my dryer for 5 days, or mow the yard, or go and walk, like whatever. I would give myself permission to sit in my feelings or just rest or whatever, but then go and do something productive that was small. I wouldn't make these huge plans. I would meet myself where I'm at, because if I know I'm struggling with motivation, I'm not going to tell myself, like, I'm going to work out 6 days this week. I'm struggling even just getting off the daggum couch to making myself dinner. That's an unrealistic goal for me. So maybe a more realistic goal is, okay, I'm going to work out for 20 minutes 2 times this week. And it sounds so minuscule. Is that the right word? Yeah. But maybe that's just where I'm at right now. And that's okay. Oh, hello, another Trey. But that I would just set goals of where I am, but then not feel guilty about the rest time. So if you are feeling guilty about it, it is a little bit counterproductive. 2 years, no contact. I love that. Congratulations on that. But then we went no contact pretty close around the same time, because I went no contact in October of 21. No, October 2020, not 21. October 2020. Whoa, time's gone by fast. Okay, Facebook, YouTube, y'all have any questions for me? Y'all are chiming in every once in a while. I want to make sure y'all we don't miss your questions too. Does the tool, oh, good question. Does the toolkit include one-on-one sessions with you as well? So my course doesn't include sessions in the course, but you get my one-on-ones discounted by like $20, like $20 off of them. So it doesn't include them, but you do get them discounted. And that's for my 30-minute check-ins and the 1-hour calls. That's a good question. Who is calling me? Thank you for posting this kind of content. It's much appreciated. You're very welcome. Advice for being afraid of dating again. Ooh, Lord. I was a hot mess express. We'll just say that when I started dating again. I don't need to talk about it too long because my fiance's in the other room and he'll come in here and agree very strongly with it. And I'm not in the mood for that today. I'm kidding. Okay, this will probably surprise you, but my number one piece of advice when it comes to dating again, well, 2. Number 1, don't let people convince you that you should be dating at any point in time. So like, don't let people be like, you just need to move on. You just need to put yourself back out there. If you are not ready, do not let people convince you that you are ready. And don't try to convince yourself that you are. You will know you when you're ready, and you'll also know when you're not. And sometimes you may think you're ready and you get out there and try again and you realize, oh no, I'm not ready for this. And that's okay too. But the number one thing that I would tell you is you have got to learn how to manage your triggers before you start dating again. And here's the reason why. When you start to refill that role in your life, and this applies for anything, by the way, whether it's dating again, whether it's getting a new job after a narcissistic boss, whether it's starting to like put yourself out there to meet new friends because you dealt with a narcissistic best friend, it doesn't matter. Whenever you're starting to kind of have someone else take that role into your life, you are going to run into a whole new set of triggers that you didn't know were there because you were entering into this next step in this next phase. And that's not to be, oh my God, I just realized that y'all can see how messy my room is. I'm sorry, I had an ADD moment. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, you can see my shoes on my bed. That's cute. Anyways, telling you, my brain is a very fun place to hang out. But you're gonna get these whole new sets of triggers and all of this new, like wrapped up in this ugly bow that you have to deal with. And it's going to be so much more difficult for you to move forward in that and not self-sabotage and not freak out and bounce and not just like pull up because you're realizing like, oh my God, there's all this stuff that I'm dealing with. It's going to be so much harder for that. And that's more likely to occur if you don't start to learn how to manage them now. Because here's the thing. A big mistake that we tend to make is that we just avoid them. Like we avoid the things that trigger us. We avoid the things that we feel like are going to set us off. And I'm not saying like purposely go out there and get yourself triggered. Like that's not what I'm saying either. But what I am saying is that instead of avoiding them and giving yourself a false sense of healing, because you'll be like, oh, well, I haven't been triggered in 3 weeks. Well, it's not that you really progressed. You've been avoiding triggers, and then you get triggered, and then you have this big response, and it's like, oh my God, I've just spent like 3 steps backwards, or I'm back to square one. Like, no, we never actually move forward. We've just been avoiding them. Managing them is what's important. And that's actually the module that I'm adding to my course on Thursday. It's a whole module on managing triggers, how to break them down, how to reduce the intensity, and how to tell yourself a different story, because every trigger tells you a story about yourself. It reminds you of an event that you went through, and that event told you something harmful about yourself. That's what's happening when you're triggered. So that whole module is about that. So again, just remember there's only 2 days left where it's only $65. There are payment options available, but that module is being launched on Thursday. If you're already signed up before Thursday, you'll get it automatically, and you won't have to pay the new price for it because it is going up, because it's going from 7 to 8 weeks plus some other stuff. So get it now before it goes up. But you just have to learn how to face them head on. And I know that it's scary, but if you have a plan, then it doesn't make it as scary. How do you deal with cyber stalking? My ex and his girlfriend are doing that to me right now. I will answer that question in just 1 second. So I don't know if this will still work. So to sign up for the course, you can go to the link that's in my bio on any of my platforms. Let me see if it'll still work. No, it will not. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Sorry for that 2-second delay. I just responded to you with the link on it. You can go to that link, or you can go to my website, which is in my bio. Okay, so how do you deal with cyber stalking? I'm sure you've already done this, but first and foremost, make everything super duper private. Like I'm talking like friends only, make your stuff private, make sure that they're blocked. You can even have it to where, like if you have it to where it's friends only posts and other people can't share it. If you have them blocked, if other people tag you in things, they'll see the picture, but they won't see like your tag, if that makes sense. So set up all those safeguards on it. And just and here's the thing. When people are doing this, they're looking for a response, because when people are trying to like get at you, or they're trying to stalk, or like whatever, then what they're doing is they're trying to see if they still have some sort of power or control over you. They want to see the reaction, whether it's a positive or a negative reaction. They just want to see that they can do it. But when you continually don't give them what they're looking for, which is either that freak out or the lash out or whatever, it becomes less fun for them, and eventually they'll get bored with it. So if they create a new account and they start trying to message you on it, just block the new account. Just block and go. Block and go. And you know what? You can do what I did too. Honestly, I didn't delete, but I disabled most of my social media for like 4 months, mainly Facebook. And I just took a break from it because I didn't trust myself either to like not cyber stalk myself. But I also like, I just didn't want to deal with it. So I disabled everything except for, I think I kept my Instagram, but I rarely post on my personal Instagram anyways. So I think I kept that and Snapchat. But I just did that too. And you can always do that. Again, they'll get bored and they'll move on to something else. What's the best way to deal with triggers? You need to find out what the story is. And what I mean by that, when, again, like I mentioned, Every trigger tells you a story about yourself, and you have to find out what that story is, because that story is a belief system that you have about yourself, and it's usually harmful. So whether it's I wasn't good enough, or I deserved this, or whatever it may be, you have to find out what that story is and start telling yourself a less harmful story. So, like when my ex cheated on me, I internalized it as I wasn't good enough. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with what was broken in him that he just doesn't want to deal with. So I had to start telling myself that story when I would get triggered and think about um, that belief system of that I'm not enough. So you have to, and I know that that part's hard to kind of figure out. That's why in the course, like there's questions that it walks you through, there's worksheets for it, um, to help you break this whole thing down, because it can be really hard to figure out what the belief system is. But that's the part that you have actually the most control over. We have the least amount of control over our environment. Hmm. Hang on, I just saw there's a couple of questions that came through. Fatty. How can you unlove a narcissist and fake reality of who they are? It's been years and I still feel it. Um, if you haven't done this yet, make yourself a list. I call it, Dr. Romani calls it an ick list. I call it your reality list. Um, but make a list of all the things that they did to you. And I know that sounds terrible. It's not to relive the trauma, it's to bring you to the reality of who they are. And don't like be generic with it, get specific. So like don't say they disrespected me. Well, how did they disrespect you? How did they disrespect you? um what were the things that they said? What were the things that they did? If you say they made me feel unsafe, well, how? What did they do that made you feel unsafe? What were the things that they said? So get specific with it and write down as many as you can think of. um, and that way, when you start to question what version of them is real, you have this list to bring you back to reality. And that's what helped me a lot with the fake reality. That was one of the first things that I did. And it's not fun, so give yourself time. If you have to walk away from it for a little bit, walk away from it for a little bit, um, and then come back to it. You can add to it later, but it is important. Any advice on how to deal with narcissistic parents? Honestly, dealing with narcissistic parents is very similar to dealing with a narcissistic ex. Because here's the thing: yes, the dynamics are different because it's a parent child relationship versus romantic relationship, but the cycle of abuse is the same. The first thing that you have to figure out is, what do you want your relationship with your parents to look like, or parent to look like? Is that reality? Like, could I realistically get to where I want to be with them? And if I can't, what can I? Like, what are they capable of? Like, are they capable of, maybe they're better over the phone than they are in person, or vice versa. So maybe your relationship just has to change to where you just check in them on the phone every once in a while. But you also need to have very clear boundaries. And here's the thing about boundaries: boundaries are really not about other people. They're about you and keeping yourself safe. So when people cross this line, I'm out. Because we can't control other people's behaviors, but we can control what we accept. So you can lay the boundaries out with them. Just understand, if they're a narcissist, they're not going to honor them. If anything, they'll always constantly try to push the boundary or cross the boundary. So honestly, I think it's almost even better just to set the boundary within yourself. Like, okay, when he or she starts to cross this line, I'm going to say, oh, you know what? I'm really sorry, I gotta go. And you just get off the phone, or you leave, or whatever. But you have to have those clear boundaries. Um, I've actually helped people with that specifically, like how to walk through this whole process. So if you want help on that, feel free to set up a one-on-one with me. Probably just do like 1 or 2 sessions just to get that figured out. And I'd love to help you with that, because it is a process. You kind of have to lay it all out and write it all out. So just DM me if you have any questions on that. I'd love to help you with it. How do you mention to a new partner your narcissistic abuse? Babe, he and I need to go live together again. We haven't done that in a very long time. Well, yeah, we might do that. We did this thing one time. I will answer your question, I promise. We did this thing where we like scheduled the live out and people submitted questions for me and for him, like to get the perspective from the partner and me, and then went live and answered the questions and answered the live questions too. So if y'all want us to do that again, let me know and we can probably work that out, because we got good feedback on it. We just honestly haven't done it again. But what I told him on the first date, because it's a very common question, if you're asking for the link on the course, if it's not working on the comments, just click my icon like at the top of the live and go to my page, and it's on my website. That'll probably be the fastest way. Then you can just pop back into the live. But it's called Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. If the link in the comment didn't work. I'm good. Thank you for asking over on Facebook. But essentially, to answer your question, how did I tell my new partner about my narcissistic abuser? The first date, because it's a very common question to get asked, like, well, tell me about your last relationship. I just said, my last relationship was pretty toxic. There was cheating involved. There was a lot of lying involved, and I learned a lot. And what I've learned is there are just certain behaviors that I will and will not accept from someone. And that's all I want to tell you right now. And I literally kept it at that. And I told him, I was like, I just would prefer, I'm going to have you work on a need to know basis, that I will tell you about things more specifically as you need to know them. So that's all that I said. And then that's exactly what we did. So like, and here was the need to know basis. I didn't learn to manage my triggers before I started dating again. So as I got triggered for whatever reason, I would explain to him, this is where it's coming from. I know you didn't do anything. This is not your fault. This is my responsibility. Because here's the thing, like, my triggers are my responsibility. His only responsibility is to create a safe space for me to figure my triggers out. It's not his burden to bear. So if you are, okay, so so the link for the course, if you just click the link that's in my bio, it's my website, and scroll down until you find the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. If you can't find it on the website for whatever reason, you should be able to find it though. It's like the third thing that's listed on my homepage. Just send me a DM and I'll just text you the link directly. It should be working though. Ow, I'm itchy. Will a narcissist ever feel guilty or apologetic for what they do to you? I think that they do feel the guilt. They just distract themselves from the guilt because they don't know how to process it and they don't know how to deal with it. So it's not that they're absent of feelings, it's that they don't know how to deal with the feelings. So it just comes out as rage, or it comes out as blame shifting, or it comes out as gaslighting. But I do think they feel the guilt. I think that's why a lot of narcissists also self-medicate, if you know what I mean. And as far as getting an apology, hey, look, anything's possible. Is it likely? No. Or they'll apologize in a blanket way. I'm sorry for how I treated you, or I'm sorry that you feel that way, or, I regret. Well, this one's my favorite, the I regret apology. I regret my actions. That's not an apology, by the way. That's saying something to make it sound like an apology. You look so much like Adam Lambert. I get that a lot. I get it a lot. Especially if I have eyeliner on. Do you see yourself dating ever again after? Actually, I'm engaged now. It took me several months to even. I really wasn't ready to start dating again when I first tried, and even when I met my fiance, I probably wasn't ready. It wasn't supposed to happen. Like it just wasn't. it happened by accident. So if I had done a lot more work before really starting to date him, it would have been a lot easier for me, like the first 6 months. Fortunately, he was just very patient. What are the steps to the healing process? So honestly, like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, these are steps, not necessarily like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think education phase is very important. But like we talked about earlier, it's very easy to get stuck in there and you don't want to stay there for too long. That's number one. And number two is getting control back over your own thoughts, which is overcoming the rumination phase, because it's really hard for you to move forward in your life when you're constantly thinking about the past. And I know that that's very difficult to do. Oh, the Facebook group. Is that not on my website yet? I remember going and adding it on there, but I don't know if I hit save and update. It's called the Redemption Army Facebook group. And I haven't actually like gone in and invited people on Facebook yet. I'm doing that after I get off of here. I thought I fixed that on my website though. I thought I added that earlier today, but it's very, very possible that I did not hit save and update. But if you go click the link in my bio, that's my actual website. And it'll probably be pretty close. It's kind of far down the page, but it'll say like Redemption Army Facebook group. And that's my free Facebook group that I just made. But yeah, so getting control back over your own thoughts. This one's probably going to surprise you, but I think a huge step in the healing process is actually learning how to forgive yourself, because there are a lot of things. Like here's the deal. Oh my gosh, never mind. No, I'm not gonna tell you that. But here's the thing that I realize is that I can't sit here like, yes, I didn't deserve the treatment that I deserved. I'm sorry, I didn't deserve the treatment that I got from my narcissistic ex. But that doesn't mean that I didn't make decisions and choices that kind of got me in the situation that I was in. And I had to own that. Like, that's the part of my story that I have to own. Like, I did try to break up with him. I did break up with him 3 months into the relationship, but I allowed him to come back. That was a choice that I made. I did see all the red flags at the beginning. I chose to ignore them. That was my choice. It didn't mean that I deserved to be cheating on. It didn't mean that I deserved to be back into a corner of my own home and spit on. It didn't mean that I deserved all the gaslighting. But the reality is I made choices. And I have to be okay with the fact that I made those choices and own that part of my story so I don't make the same choices again. But in that process, I had to learn to forgive myself because, and you just said it on Facebook, because the guilt and the regret is extremely hard. I had major dad guilt because I exposed this monster to my children. And I just had to start treating myself with much more grace than judgment. Oh, thank you. Oh, tiny. That's cute. Because we can get very harsh with ourselves. Very harsh with ourselves. I mean, I hear my clients say all the time, like, I was such an idiot, or I was so stupid, or how could I have been so this? Those are not healthy phrases to say to ourselves. And when when we're doing that, we're keeping ourselves in the cycle of emotional abuse. It's just we've become our own abuser. And my rule of thumb with how I talk to myself is, if I wouldn't say this to my children because I love them, then I don't need to say it to myself, because I need to value and love myself enough to not say these kind of things to myself. Forgiveness is healing, for sure. Now, I'm never going to tell you that you have to forgive your narcissistic ex. That's not my place. If you choose to do that, great. If you choose another route, that's great too. But you do need to forgive yourself. 100%. I left my narcissistic ex a month ago. Why am I overthinking it was wrong to do it? Because you were trauma bonded. I mean, really plain and simple. That's what trauma bonds do to you. And here's the thing. They spend so much time convincing you that you were and are the problem that it's natural for you to question, am I the problem? And for something like that, that's when you need to make your reality list, or what Dr. Ramani calls your ick list. Write down everything that they did to you. all the things. Because when you start to question it, why did I leave? Well, here's why I left. Here's my ick list. Like some people's ick lists are pages and pages and pages because you need that reminder sometimes. And they also, oh my God, my ex did this all throughout the relationship. He like preemptively set up this guilt for, because he knew I was going to leave at one point. And they all do, by the way. They all know at some point you're going to be done with them. But he knew. And so he would say these things. Can you hear my dog and cat again? They're going at it again. We had a nice peaceful hour. It's the bookends. They started and they're going to end with me on it. But he would say these things throughout the relationship, like, if you ever leave me, I won't take care of myself anymore. Or, if you leave me, like, I'll just end up drinking all the time again and living in a shack or like whatever. Like he would say these things to make me feel bad for even thinking about leaving. And he didn't even, well, I'm sure he did know because he, again, they know what they're doing. But like anytime I would have this thought about that I needed to get out, it's like, oh, but he won't take care of himself, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him, or like whatever. And so they almost like preemptively put this guilt in you that you abandon them. But you're choosing your own peace and removing someone from your life that's continually causing you pain. That's not abandonment. That's called choosing yourself, and that's called survival. Like there's nothing to feel guilty about with that. Duchess, leave Rupert alone. My dog's name is Duchess, and my cat's name is Rupert. They are quite a pair. I don't know if I understand this question, and I'm sorry. For some reason, it's just not registering with my brain. Like, how do you know to recognize the difference between triggers from your medic problems? Can you try to find a, and it's me, it's not you. Can you reword that in a different way? Because for some reason my brain is just not clicking with it. What helped you go no contact? So this is kind of an oxymoron, but I couldn't go no contact at first. Like I had to build my way up to no contact. But here's the thing, the longer I was in contact with him, and as I started to take care of myself again and learn about narcissism and like all this stuff, I started to be able to really see him for who he was. And it made me disgusted. Like it was like all attraction left. There was no desire there at all. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? And I'm literally watching him act like an overgrown high schooler. That by the time that one of the reasons I stayed in contact with him was because he owed me money. So he was paying me money every month. Well, by the time that we got to the last payment, which is about 5 months after we broke up, he was dragging it out. And I knew he was going to do this. And so it was like 10 days after he was supposed to have paid me. And I was just like, is this even worth it? Like, is me trying to contact him and remind him of the payment even worth the amount that I'm supposed to get? And the answer was no. And so I didn't say anything to him. I didn't tell him I wasn't talking to him anymore. Nothing like that. I literally just blocked him. And I think because I did it in a progressive state, because at first it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to wait for an hour before I respond. And like I would set a timer for an hour, or, I'm not going to answer his phone calls anymore. It's only going to be through text. And then I blocked him on social media, but we were still texting. Then it was like, I'm only going to talk about business related things. So it was like, a progressive no contact. But by the time that I actually went full blown no contact, I never looked back, and I was never tempted to not. I really wasn't. Yeah, I mean, when you start to see them for who they really are, it's gross. Like, I mean, it really is. It's just gross. And it's so funny, and I know that this is petty, but ain't nothing wrong with a little petty. I would probably say a solid 80% of my clients and myself are included in this, where they're like, he wasn't even my normal type, like physically, and he's not even that attractive. I don't even know why this happened. Like, it's just so crazy how that happens. And I think all attraction's lost when you start to see them for who they are. Really. They're a lot cuter when you're trauma bonded. That's all I'm going to say. uh. I shouldn't laugh as hard as I'm laughing. But it's so true, though. It's so freaking true. And I hear it all the time on my coaching calls. All the time. Okay, y'all. I'm getting hungry. Like a difference between trigger, example, medical problems before. Oh, I think I get what you're saying. Can you DM me that question about the trigger with the medical problems and severe anxiety disorder? Because that might take me some time to answer, and I've only got about like 5 minutes left. DM me, and we can chat about that. And I also want to just make sure that I don't know why I'm having a hard time with that, but I want to make sure. Can I do a video on what? My answer will be yes. I just want to make sure I do the video you're asking for. Okay, so I have like 5 minutes left because I'm getting hungry. So just a reminder, my price for the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit course, it's a really long name, but it's going up on Thursday because another module is being added to where it's an 8-week course, not 7 weeks, and then other information all throughout the course. Right now, it's only $65. It goes up on Thursday and it will never be $65 again. If you sign up now, when I relaunch it, little mini relaunch on Thursday, you're gonna get all the new information anyways, because all the current members will get the updated info. So if you're thinking about it, here's the deal. Your healing is worth your investment. I know that times are tough right now. Like, trust me, I know. I am in grad school, powering through it just like everybody else. But understand that your healing, it is worth investing, and you do deserve it. And I promise you, if you just have a plan with this stuff, it doesn't take forever. And getting out of the rumination cycle is absolutely crucial to moving forward and rebuilding your life, because you can't really move forward if you're always thinking back. Okay, can you explain the toolkit a little bit more? So I'm just going to talk about it, like what it's going to look like on Thursday too. So it's going to be a total of 8 weeks. The new module that I'm adding is managing triggers. So it's going to help reduce the intensity of your triggers, help you manage them, tell yourself a different story, all of that. So it's not a timed course in the sense where you have to complete it in a certain amount of time. There's no expiration or anything like that. The time portion when it comes to the course is, let's say you signed up today, you're going to get module 1 today, but you're not going to get module 2 for another week. Why I do that is so that way you can take everything down into bite-sized pieces and learn the strategies from that week, but more importantly, start to do them during that week and get them into practice. Because when you can just have access to like all 8 weeks right away, it's not going to be very effective for you to just blow through all the information, and then now you're just in information overload. So it breaks it down into small bite-sized pieces so you can work on it week by week. So after week 2 opens, then another 7 days, module 3 will open, so on and so forth, all the way to module 8. But no, once you get it, you can take it as many times as you want. You can take as long as you want. Like you can take 4 months if you want to. That part doesn't matter, but you can't speed it up. As far as how to sign up, I tried putting the comment or the links in the comments on here. I don't know if it works that way, but if you go to the link in my bio on any of my platforms, actually, well, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, this will work. But if you're on TikTok, just hit the little icon at the top of the live, go to the link that's in my bio that takes you to my website, and just scroll down a little bit, and you will see it where it says Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. Right now, it's still going to say it's a 7-week course and all that stuff because the mini relaunch won't happen till Thursday. But if you sign up today, you'll get all the new information on Thursday. So you might as well get it now while it's cheaper. I'm telling y'all my secrets. So it's only $65 right now. There is a payment option available to where you can break it up. But the price is going up on Thursday, and it won't be $65 again anymore. So if you have questions, feel free to DM me. And then also, I just started a free Facebook group just for people to connect, have a safe place. It's private, it's secure. You have to actually request to join. I don't really know what we're going to do on it yet. I might go live on it every now and then, but mainly it's just to help people break that isolation and have a safe community that's free. It doesn't cost anything, and you can just get validation and the clarity that you deserve. That should be in my website too. I'm 99.9% sure I updated that. I just don't know if I hit the save button. If not, I will fix that. If you are following me on Facebook though, once I get off here, I'm going to invite everyone that's following me to it. So just make sure that you're following me on Facebook too, and you can get that. My voice is wearing out. I haven't talked this much in a really long time. That's sad. Oh, how do you deal with narcissistic in-laws? Can we talk about this for a second though? Oof. I have to be really careful with what I say about this, but let's just say, no, okay. This is a really tricky spot to be in because nobody wants to be the person that comes in between their spouse and their parents. Nobody does. And it just sucks. Like because it's different when it's like your own parents. Like you can set those boundaries and you can define what you want your relationship to look like with them, but it's hard when it's your partner's parents because they're either enmeshed in it and they don't see it yet, or they're being used as like a scapegoat in this whole manipulation tactic. And I don't know about y'all, but like I never wanted to be the person that came in between someone and their parents, if that makes sense. So it's really hard. It's difficult waters to navigate. But here's the thing. You have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. So you have to, it's essentially the same thing with narcissistic parents. You have to find what your boundaries are, what your firm guidelines are of this is what I will and will not tolerate. And when it crosses this line, I'm out. And you know what? You can have that conversation with them, but if they are truly narcissistic, like they're not going to honor it. If anything, they're going to try to push it on purpose to get a reaction out of you. But it definitely needs to be something that you set within yourself, but you also need to communicate that with your partner and with your spouse, because they need to understand where you stand. Especially if your spouse sees them for who they are, at least, then y'all need to work together on, okay, how can we protect ourselves from it? And how can we set up our own boundaries? But the biggest thing is when you are entering into that, and here's just the badass news, and I'm just gonna be honest with you. When you are, how do I say this? If you're dealing with this narcissistic parent, there's usually a ringleader. So let's just say it's the mom. Like if the mom is the ringleader, then she's in control of this whole enmeshed dynamic, right? And she's been used to that control for probably 20, 25, 30 years or something, because they're the ruler of the roost, right? Well, when you come into that, if you don't line up with this little control bubble that they have, or worse, you come in and start to expose it, then you have now become the enemy because you are threatening the control. So, and that's just the bad news. Like it may have times where it's better than others, or it may go in a cycle or whatever it may be. But you become that black sheep, and because you're threatening their control, you're threatening their manipulation, and you're coming in and changing that narrative and changing that dynamic, and they will never not see you for that. and I mean, they just won't. So that's why you have to figure out what your firm boundaries and your firm personal guidelines are of like, I will not stay, I will not continue this, I will leave the family event when this line is crossed. And you just have to stick with it. And honestly, if your spouse decides to go no contact with them, then that's their choice. It's going to be really hard for you to go no contact completely. But you and your spouse have to get on the same page with that. Very much so. You'll have to get on the same page. Okay, I'll answer this question real quick, and then I do gotta go because my fiance is probably hungry too. I haven't started cooking dinner. So any tips for believing your own lived experience of the abuse and not being make your Dr. Romney calls it an ick list, but make your reality list and write down everything specifically that they did that made you feel unsafe, disrespected, devalued, um, and making you feel like your basic needs were asking for too much. Make this list. And it's not to relive your trauma, it's used to be as a reminder for you of what your reality actually was and why you left and who they really are. Because cognitive dissonance, it's a real thing and it's a bitch. So you've got to be able to define what your reality is and move into this place of acceptance that there was a Dr. Jekyll and there was a Mr. Hyde. And we fell in love with Dr. Jekyll. And unfortunately, that person didn't exist. Mr. Hyde was always what was real. And we got exposed to Mr. Hyde later on. And we have to move into this place of accepting that they are Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll was just a facade that was created for us. And that sucks. It really sucks. But we have to accept that, or else we'll never be able to accept our reality. When are you going back live? Yes, I do need to wrap up today. Let's look at the calendar together, shall we? Okay, tomorrow's first day of school, so I'll be up early for that. Oh no, my appointments for tomorrow aren't showing. Okay, it will be tomorrow. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going live tomorrow on Instagram, most likely. I'll be live somewhere tomorrow, but most likely it'll be Instagram. Because it kind of sucks. I can't go live on Instagram. And like right now, I'm able to be on live with y'all on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok. But Instagram, I have to do it on my phone. I can't do it from my desktop, so I can't. It's annoying. Not that y'all care. I'm just sitting here talking. Probably tomorrow. Let's say 3:30ish, maybe. Sometime tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. I'll post it on my Instagram the time I go live. Or if I end up going live here again, I'll post it. But tomorrow. I haven't actually sat down and made my schedule for tomorrow yet. But all right, y'all. If I don't get off now, I am just going to sit here and chit chat. So again, 2 days left to get Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit at its current price before it goes up. If you get it now, you'll get all the new info that's being launched with it on Thursday. So don't worry about that. All the new members get that. But get it now while you can at the price that it's at, because it will not be $65 anymore past Thursday, because it'll be a whole new module, all new information. And it's really designed to help bring you from this place of rumination and just the mental mind F that happens after leaving a narcissist and getting you to this place of being able to own your story, find your closure, reclaim control over your own thoughts and manage your triggers and all the things that we don't know how to do, but we desperately want to do. So it's the design of it is to be the resource that I desperately wish that I had. Outside of that, you guys, I always just enjoy being on here and hanging out with y'all and appreciate the support and the love that y'all give me. And it's truly, I say it every time and every time I mean it. It's truly an honor to be a part of your healing journey, whatever that capacity is. If y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a DM. And I hope you have a beautiful night. And I will see you tomorrow, most likely on Instagram instead of here. So make sure you're on my Instagram if you're not, so you can catch that live. So y'all have a wonderful night, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye now.